Being that the drive shafts are out, I took it upon myself to go ahead and figure on refinishing these guys. They had years of grease and dirt and crud on them, and obviously rust has built up. There was tons of grease down in these points. I'm going to refinish them. You know, they're balanced. They come balanced from the factory. You have these weights on the shaft that help to keep it in balance. And some people say, oh, don't paint your drive shafts because that layer of paint could throw off the finely tuned balance on them. I'm not worried about it because the amount of dirt and grit and caked grease and road scum and oil that I've carved off of this thing, a few microns of paint isn't going to make a difference. My final step is to take this brass brush and to put it on my drill. I basically have gone across all these surfaces, and I'm just going to wipe it off, and then I'll be done with this portion. And then next step is I'm going to paint it with some Hammerite paint, which is an alkyd based paint that encapsulates rust. See, it really takes it down. It's really nice looking compared to how it was. The Hammerite should encapsulate all of this rust for years to come. So it's a crisp morning, and I'm getting back at the transmission work. Was able to get out a little bit yesterday, use my BioLite fire pit. It was much more windy. Built a little bit of a windbreak on this side of the van, and just worked on cleaning this mess up. That's the oil that was caked, all the dirt. It was quite a disgusting mess, but I will post those photographs of the before and after. I was able to remove the bell housing, was able to really get in here, scrape it all out, clean it all up, and I have to say I'm real proud of how that turned out. And the amount of garbage that was caked on this thing was just incredible. And I'll probably tool it up just a tiny bit more, but I'm going to focus on getting the bell housing all cleaned up today. And then I'll start working on the rest of the transmission, getting it cleaned up as well and ready for reinstall. Another work day. This is a process, but it's going to be worth it in the end because it's going to look really nice and it's going to operate and function amazingly. This is how horrible the inside of the bell housing is. And I've already wiped it down a little bit and scraped it down a little bit, so there was a lot of garbage in this thing. So I'm satisfied with the interior of the bell housing. I pretty much have scrubbed it off about as good as I'm going to go. So now I'm going to flip it over and start messing with the exterior. And you can see it's pretty nasty still. I've done a portion of it, but I've got to get all the rest of this cleaned up. After a whole lot of scrubbing, I finally got this guy to where I think he's paintable at this point. Wire brush, screwdriver, tiny screwdrivers to scrape into these corners, a brass bristle brush, some brake cleaner, and Scotch-Brite pads. It's still not absolutely perfect, but it's as perfect as I'm going to get it. And I would say that it's ready for primer and paint. And then I have to ask myself, am I seriously going to consider doing the whole thing? I should, but goodness gracious, it's going to be a bear. Alright, so I've got the facing of the transmission is completely done and cleaned up, and it is ready to just go ahead and close up with a bell housing on top. And then that way too, maybe what I can do is stand the bell housing, stand the transmission up on the bell housing and clean it, and get it cleaned off before I paint. £27 is what this is supposed to be set to for torque. And the only other thing to put in is the pivot bolt for the release bearing, and it doesn't really have a torque spec. I don't have a deep socket for that, so I'm just going to hand tighten it. About like that. Good habit, after you're done with your torquing something down, take it back down to its pre-described resting point, which is 10 pounds for this Tecton. That's it. I forgot to film this, but I just removed my bearing off of the clutch fork. It's the clutch fork release bearing. So I'm going to replace it and put a new one on it. And I forgot to show how I hammered it off. Anyway, I'll just explain it. So what I did is I took a 1 1/8 inch socket, and it matches up pretty much to the inside collar of the where the bearing seats. So I just took it and rested it on cinder block, and then used that, and then I took a hammer and just tapped on either side until it slowly worked its way down and off. And then I'm going to clean up this little bit of oil here, and I'll be replacing with a brand new bearing. I've got him started, sitting on a flat surface. There you have it. And that's all the way down. Beautiful. Didn't hurt anything. So the next thing we're going to do before I turn this thing upside down and start cleaning the other sections of the transmission is we're going to install the clutch release fork and the release bearing with its clips. So the way that this works is you have this pivot point here on that little bolt that sticks out. It's got a rounded top. That rests inside that little section right there. It's actually it's built in, so there's your pivot. This spring holds the fork to that head of the bolt. So what you have to do is be able to get this off of here in such a way to where you can get it on there and then put this in and lock it in place. It's very obvious the way that this thing seats, the way that it locks in there on that side. So I tried this sort of a dry fit yesterday, and it is a bit of a bear. One thing that we want to do before we do this is you have a lot of friction points in this. Is it constantly moving? So you can see where it's worn right here and here on the end of the fork, where it sits on top of the clips. how they clip in there and they cause some friction. So you want to use a special waterproof and high pressure grease. Now I just ended up going by the manual that was asking for a moly disulfide lithium type of grease. And in looking at this is the kind of stuff that you can use. You just basically want to make sure it's cleaned off really well. Make sure these are on appropriately. You need some at that point and that point. Goes on like that. This guy goes on like this. Even if he doesn't want to, you can make him work. Okay, good. Your shaft will go over this, like that. Seats down in there. Good, awesome. Yes, exactly. Now you're not going to be able to see this, but I have to be able to get this in here like so. I'm going to leave that one loose. I'm going to leave one side loose. Let's see if I can get this back in here again. Like so. You have to reach back behind here and get this to, I need to get one side off and out. You're going to have a wrestling match with this because you have to use that spring, get it back behind the head of that pivot point, and you have to make the spring lock it in place. That's how it's supposed to work. Yeah, just make sure you're centered appropriately. It was not centered, and that's why it wasn't working. Okay. Alright, now it's locked. The only thing I can tell you with that is you have to just use your feel and understand exactly what you're trying to accomplish. Because you have to get this thing centered inside the hole that it's, penetrating through. And it needs to be sitting on the pin, as well as you have to be able to get your hands back behind there in order to manipulate that spring in such a way to be able to release it. Right now it's definitely locked on the pin, which is awesome, how it's supposed to be. And then this guy is greased appropriately so that he's doing his thing. So he just did it. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Up. It's just coming to me, I'm not standing up here. Center it up. So before I get this guy cleaned up, I'm going to do a little bit of a before and after just to kind of show you what it looks like. So I'm going to go around and kind of look at some of the garbage that's on it and see what I've got to clean up. So as you notice, there's a lot of, you can tell the difference between what I've already cleaned in here and what the backside of the transmission actually looks like. Lots of nastiness on here. A lot of corrosion. The aluminum has corroded pretty badly. So, and it's going to take me a little bit to get this all worked out. But, ugh, it's so bad. I've already scratched on this up here a bit to kind of knock some of it down. I don't know that I'll really get it to the point where I'm going to paint it or not. But I'll at least get it cleaned up to the point where I'll get 30 years of nastiness off of it. Nothing else. So this is going to be quite an undertaking. And I really want to get it to where I can get it really cleaned up before I put it back in. Come over
If you
here.
don't know.
Come on.
No.
I'll cut it out.
No.
Come here.
I'm not coming over there. I look terrifically
I'm gonna
awful.
cut it out.
I don't trust you. As far as I can
There's
tell.
no way that I would
I wanna be on
include it.
film.
Come here.
I don't want to be on film.
Come here.
Why?
Because I said to.
Why?
Just
If you don't cut it out, I'll leave you forever.
You know I'm gonna cut it out, of course. How are you feeling?
Good. Tired.
Yeah.
Blah.
So now I've got the thing flipped over and I'm working on the bottom side. There's very little left to complete with this and it'll be cleaned up completely. So if I want to make it easier for future maintenance and guard against any kind of corrosion and things like that, and make it definitely easier to spot any kind of leaks or anything like that, the cleaner it is, and applying the coat of paint will definitely make it obvious when I've got fluids leaking from somewhere. So I think I'm going to take advantage of this moment and try to do that. There it goes. The sun is gone. All right, I'm going to put some Krylon paint primer Color Max on this guy. If nothing else, a little protective layer against any more aluminum corrosion. crazy. It's actually already dry to the touch, that first coat. So this is coat number 2. Looks like it might be done. Got that all painted. So hopefully it does what it's supposed to do. When I turn this thing up and look at it, it'll be in good shape. That's some thick coat of paint. That's about 3 coats.